What's going on, world? It's your boy Kuya P, Nerds Rule the World, back for another ShoPowSho. So, of course, it's the Babinka boy, the Adobro, the leader of the Hala Hala homies in the Sinagang gang, back for another one. And as you see on the screen, I have a special guest. One of the main reasons I put together ShoPowSho way back in the day is to meet amazing creatives of every genre in every form. And as you see on the screen, I have the amazing author, writer, Cristina Oxtra. Thank you so much for your time today, Cristina. I'm going to shoot out some air horns right now. You don't hear it because it'll be in post because I don't want to deafen you. You probably heard enough things when you were serving, like I was in the military. So no deafening here. Welcome. We're just celebrating that you are participating with us today.
Thank you. Kumusta mga kababayan? So all you Filipinos out there and everybody else listening, it's such an honor to be here to be with you and chit chat and talk about books, talk about life, talk about
Yes.
being Filipino.
I love it. As I said earlier, we've never met in person, but one of the beauties that I like to credit the pandemic is this show started because of the pandemic. I think we all felt like we were living in the end of times when that whole thing was occurring. And I know for myself that if there's anything or one goal that I've always wanted to do it was to celebrate our people. I am a proud Filipino American, and going on Twitter, going on Facebook, utilizing the social networks, I was able to come across so many amazing creatives that I wasn't finding locally or seeing advertised or pushed on regular TV and cable. And I came across you, like I've come across so many other folks, and was just delighted in that, here we are. We are working on Teen Titans Go. We're working on books about Larry Ilong, introducing us to our people. I've just been hungering to consume content like this and seeing content that celebrates us, because not only for myself, I want to share it with my future generation. I have a teenage daughter that I'm raising, and I want to give her the material that I never had growing up. And so thankful for you for coming on, and just other creatives as well that are sharing themselves, and so excited to talk with you today. So let's get going, because I want to know all about you. I want to know kind of what inspired you, and what you have learned, and if you have kind of similar stories of growing up as well, and learning about yourself. And before I do that, before we talk about you, the first question I have out the gate is, I'd like to celebrate those that came before. I'm curious if writing creatively was part of your journey, or of your parents or ancestors, relatives that came before you. So we like to celebrate them. If you could kind of maybe shine a light on your folks, or any buddy previously relative that maybe had some creative genes that kind of came in through the bloodline before you were born.
Well, that kicks me off. That's a good segue to my latest book actually is dedicated to my Lolo. On my maternal side, he was good at drawing. He was kind of an artist. Grandma, she was good at writing too. She taught English, I believe, when I don't know much about her, but that's kind of what she did. My mom played the piano. She played classical music. So there's some really creative people. Everybody sing. I'm not going to say I sang, but everybody in my family sings. And it's kind of cool. There's a lot of creative people in my family. But I wanted to dedicate this debut picture book, What Lola Wants, to my grandpa, because he was the one who said that one day when I was growing up in the Philippines that I was gonna go to America. Because one day you're gonna go to America, you're gonna show what everybody can do, and that you can write and do and pursue your dreams. And I thought he was crazy. I thought that, like, really, all I saw of America was what I saw on TV. Sesame Street, Dynasty, all these other, things. Price is Right, where they gave away cars, and San Francisco, the San Francisco treat, and all this stuff. I'm like, that to me felt like it was Mars. That's so far away. How could I possibly get there? And he also said I was going to be on Sesame Street because I was addicted to Sesame Street growing up. But I'm still waiting on that. So if anybody from Sesame Street is watching, I'm still waiting for my big debut on Sesame Street. But he had that vision for me. Just like our grandparents always have this vision of things that they want to see us do and achieve things. And sadly, he passed away by the time my family and I immigrated to the Philippines, to America. And so he didn't kind of get to physically see that I finally landed here and I finally, get to have my dream. So I think it's just so appropriate that, the universe gave me this opportunity that the first big book I get out there, my debut picture book, is dedicated to him and about, it was inspired by something that happened to him while I was growing up in the Philippines. I try not to get emotional because I feel like he's living on through the pages that every time I read this story, every time a kid will open the book, he will know about my Lolo, not personally or anything, but he kind of lives on. And that legacy lives on, even though he's not here physically. So I hope that, I did him proud.
Yes. Oh, I'm feeling that. And I'm an empath, so I will cry. It's okay to be not okay. We all have to feel these emotions. I love that. And that is so beautiful. And he is shining down, thanking you and loving you still. That is so beautiful. Amazing. Um, Wonderful. And everybody, as you see behind me, real quick, we're going to be talking about Christina's story, but we're going to get also into these books as well later. But when you have time, I'm going to have all of Christina's links in the description below. Please go check out her website and go pick up all of these amazing books that Christina has written. So good. You're going to want to read these, especially what Lola Wants that she just kind of spoke about in all of her work. Just amazing. You kind of touched upon the next phase of where I want to go in like this life story sequence, Christina. Is You talked about how like you immigrated here. I want to kind of get the part of your story from like the when you were born to like age 5. Uh and I know that's a lot, and there's a lot of things
Oh
to talk
no.
about there. But if you can tell me just, I guess, your parents' story of immigrating to the U.S., why they wanted to come here, and then from like that point to like maybe age 5, or if you were already at that age before you even immigrated here. I don't know yet.
My family, I got to America, I was already a freshman in high school.
Oh, okay. So we're
So
gonna get all right. So we got a lot to cover then.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I was older, but growing up in the Philippines, I had a relative, I had an aunt that was already in the US. So I kind of had that idea, and every time she'd call or send the balikbayan box and all that, I had an idea. I had an uncle also who traveled on the ships and go back and forth and worked on there. And so he would bring back things. So I was familiar with the United States, but still couldn't picture myself ever
okay.
getting here. We all dreamed of, maybe one day we'll all be there.
And I want to
Um,
dig into that if you don't mind. I
yeah,
want to under like you're probably like the
dream.
first person that later age I think I've talked to that immigrated, and because I'm again like I was born here, but like I have such this connection to my motherland, and like I dream. I've never even been to the Philippines yet. That's like a goal of mine is to visit homeland, but
Oh,
also I'm slightly worried because of stories I hear and Duarte and just all of that. Um, can you tell me about? I guess we're going to stay in that time period then, from when you were born to 5. Can you tell me how maybe your parents' love story? I like getting those little like how your parents met, and then when they had you, and then just kind of what they would tell me about you from when you were born, from baby to age 5.
my grandma said that I was going to be a journalist because I like to talk a lot. So, and she was right. When I graduated from college, I did become a journalist. She said because I like to write and I like to talk. Which is funny because as I got older, I got a little bit more introverted. We always say that many writers are introverts because they'd rather be left alone and write quietly, leave us alone. And if you ask us to, like, come on a show or have to talk about our books, we're like, what? Talk about myself? You're like, can I just talk about my character? My character, I know. With me, you kind of get shy. And as a journalist, you're always putting the person in front of you. So
Yeah.
that kind of thing. When I was a kid, I talked a lot, but I was addicted to Sesame Street. That was one of the ways that I learned English, really. I mean, we learned English in school, but just like anything else, like you would learn Spanish or other language in schools right now, it's very bookish.
Yeah.
It's by the book. So when I would watch Sesame Street, and I would watch that sucker over and over again, even if I've seen the episode before, I will watch it again I can tell you every episode that I like. I can tell you about, how I learned how that the silent E would elongate the sound and grammar and all this stuff because they taught you all of these
Oh
things,
yeah.
um, along with obviously morals and how to behave and, be a good citizen and that sort of thing. Um, and that's kind of how I then realized like one of my favorite characters was Kermit the Frog. He had this persona where he was a reporter, and no matter what happened, the anything else like craziness would be happening in the scene, but he would always somehow get his story and make a report. So I'm like, I want to be that reporter. I want to be like Kermit the Frog, and be a reporter and be a journalist and be able to get my story no matter what happened. So that's kind of how it all
Wow. So
started.
you can really target being a journalist way back to Sesame Street personally.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
super
And
sweet.
that was such an inspiration to me that I wanted to be like that. And my grandma used to buy this kids magazine called Musmos. I'm not sure if they're still in business, but it's kind of like what Highlights is here in
Yeah,
America,
yeah.
kind of like that. Um, and I wrote something and it got published. It was just they were asking for things, they like to publish kids thing, and it was probably awful. I can barely remember what I wrote, but it got published, and my grandma was really proud of it. And I was like, like everybody gets their thing. Well, all the kids that submit, I'm sure it gets published. But I kind of realized, like, maybe there's something about this writing thing that maybe I can do it. So it's not just about talking. Maybe I can write because I realized there was this power in words that here that my grandma was proud and then she was showing it, and I was able to convey something, and then she's able to show it to people. I'm like, maybe there's something to this. And so
Oh,
that's
wonderful.
kind of how I continued my love of reading and writing and kind of pursuing that
That's
dream.
amazing. So that's great that she was supporting you through all of that. So was your grandmother staying in the household, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I grew up
So
in a
what was the living
multi-generational.
situation, I guess?
Oh, I grew up in a multi-generational household.
Okay. Which
Because
is
my
most
mom,
Filipino households.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is awesome. Grandma's, grandpa, grandma, grandpa, my maternal side, everybody, cousins, live just next door, so you're never alone.
Yeah.
You always had family to lean on
I
and
love that. I love
to
that.
support you. You come home, it was not an empty house,
Yeah.
you're always supported. There's somebody to talk
Yeah.
to. Somebody is cooking dinner, whoever it is. It could be grandma, it could be mom, it could be your aunt, but there's always food. Somebody cooked. You need help with homework. There's a bunch of people you might be able to ask.
Yeah.
My grandpa always waiting for, the bus to drop me off. He's right there at the front gate. So it was kind of cool. And I think sometimes America's missing out on that.
Definitely. So that's elementary, middle school, high school, growing up in the Philippines. But
Yep.
then I'm curious, when get a little bit older, I'm sure that while that's lovely, when we become teenagers, we kind of rebel, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
as we're, showing love toward it right now, did it get difficult when you got into the teenage
um,
years?
yeah. So my stepdad is British, so we actually moved to England, and I went there for a few years, my middle school years, and then we immigrated here. I was already a freshman, going to be a freshman, on my way to be a freshman in high school. So yeah, a couple of countries to get used to.
Okay.
By the time I got to become a teenager in high school, of course, I wanted to be just like everybody else. I think many young people who come from, no matter what country you come from, you immigrate to the US, you wanna blend in. You want to be just like your friends. You want to eat their food. You want to look like them. You want to dress like them.
Yeah.
So I really didn't recognize, and really I should have appreciated my background. I still spoke Tagalog. My mom still yelled at me in Tagalog, so I understood Tagalog very well. When she
Yeah.
starts breaking out Tagalog, I know she's angry. Um, and
It's still the same.
right, and I still had that. But I was kind of, dare I say, embarrassed because I wanted
Oh
to
no,
be
I think we all felt that. And I love
yeah,
that we can all say that, yes, in and now we're taking it back. We're claiming it back,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. And I think my writing is when I started writing, it was reclaiming that. Even my name, it was shortened to Chris for a long time because for some reason they kept misspelling my name. They kept putting an H. It's Cristina, and I shortened it to Chris because it was more Americanized and it was a lot easier for people to remember and write down. And then they still kept putting H, some people. So, but then as I got older, I realized, no, I'm not Chris. I'm Cristina. That is
Yeah,
my full name. And through writing, I started kind of reclaiming some of that. I started doing more research. I started doing more reading. I started trying to look for people who looked like me in books because growing up, I didn't have that. It was all about everybody else. And if there was a person of color, it was usually the sidekick or the
exactly.
comedy relief.
Hmm.
And heaven forbid there was a Filipino. There might be other people of color, but I couldn't find anybody like me. And if I went to the library during that time, the only thing people knew about was World War II. Philippines, oh yeah, we went there in World War II. And that was it.
Yeah,
There was nothing else. Information about Larry Idleon, no, we didn't learn that in school. I went to school in California. I went to high school in California. I never heard his name at school. I never heard it in history class or anything. So I didn't know anything. I didn't know that all these awesome Filipinos that came before us contributed so much to this country, but nobody talks about it.
exactly. And that's why we're claiming it here. And while I'm talking to you, we're talking about our people and we're repping our people because we've been here since centuries, which is also what blew my mind. Speaking of Ilong, we had the Morro Bay in
That's,
California where
yeah,
our people were first coming over in Louisiana, coming over there. It's so oh my gosh. Like as a filmmaker and
but
as a
I didn't
creative
know any
writer
of
like
that.
you, I'm hoping that we can get these stories fully written
Yes.
and put out there and made into like creative forms because I'm sure you see a lot of our stories don't really get to people through school, so
No.
it's like we have to find creative ways through other works, to make people, oh wow, yeah, of course. So I love that you are doing that as well, Christina. I want to shift. I'm always infatuated of the tales of us coming over for better lives and journeys and all of that, because also there's those part of that struggle I think there that enforces and why we're so diehard and resilient towards making what we're trying to do happen. Um,
Mhm.
can you speak to, I guess, kind of like that journey? Because you said you went to the UK, and then you went from the UK to America. Can you tell me just as a child growing up, being involved with all of that movement, what was that like on you and your development?
Oh,
Were you having like any issues? I know for myself, when I was younger, my mom was teaching me Tagalog, but then because I was a military kid, uh, going from Italy to California to Maine, I was and being in neighborhoods that speak multiple languages, that she stopped teaching Tagalog to me because I was getting my words confused,
oh.
which is sad. And I was like, Mom, that was the best time because that kids, our brains are so more malleable to get that material, but she stopped.
I
And
never forgot it. I'm
yeah,
proud to say I never forgot it. I love languages. I've always loved languages. I have an ear for it. So when I was in England, we were learning French in school. And if in my school, if you can handle French, they'll throw in German. So I was learning that as well. And I still maintain Tagalog because my mom will still speak to me. There were times when I wouldn't answer in Tagalog, but I know I understand what she says. I can still speak it, although I would not speak it because again, there's the whole we just want to be like everybody else.
yeah,
Um, and I don't want people to hear me speaking it, even though I know I understand what you're saying. But there were times when it was fun, like when we'd be in a store and we're talking about some girl that's trying on something and it doesn't look good, and she'll speak to me in Tagalog, and I'd laugh because I'm like, Mom, she goes, they don't know what we're saying. And I felt like, and I would laugh because I'm like, that's true. I'm like, it was like part of being this in the secret club. It was just me and her. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah. So it was like a cool bonding moment. No one else would know what we're talking about. That script does not look good on her. Um, so that's kind of how I
Crazy
kept.
that code shift. I'm sorry. That code shift where I love that it was cool where like we could have that code and secret language, right? But then we felt embarrassed by it. But that was
Yeah,
because we didn't want to be othered by other people, and it's just sad that we felt that way. Like there's the ups and downs of it, which is, yeah,
I think it's a natural thing of any young person. I
yeah.
worked in the schools for a few years, so and I have my own son, so I've kind of gone through the teenage years of I think every teenager goes through that of I just want to be like everybody else. And if you compound that with being somebody who looks different and comes from a different place, that's like times two at least, maybe
Mhm.
times three or more, that you really have got to try and, be like everybody else because you just
Yeah.
want to be one of the guys. You just want to be that.
I bring it up because I guess the ultimate thing and what I try to have expressed here as well is what can we do? You and I, as we're both parents. How can we make the next generation feel more comfortable so they don't feel ashamed? What have you done, and or I guess are there methods you're doing to help? And or what would you have liked to have heard back then by somebody, when you felt ashamed to speak,
I think I would have liked to have, of course, my parents wanted me to, my mom, like I said, would talk and she would make the food and she would do all these things. But I don't think when you're a teenager,
We don't listen.
yeah, I was going to say, no matter, I don't think it could be anybody who could tell you,
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
might not still listen, but don't give up on it. Keep doing it. I mean, that's one of the reasons I write is to get the stories out there so that the kids know about it. When my son was growing up, I don't have a lot of people to speak Tagalog with here. I stand Filipino community. They're kind of further up north away from me. So I wasn't able to teach him the language, but I at least got involved in groups that are focused on diversity and social justice, things like that. So he grew up in that environment, and so he knows the importance of diversity and inclusion and equity. And then introducing him to books written by diverse authors. So he has slowly, grew up in that environment, and then as I became like an author, I would take him to events so he can meet other people. One of my favorite pictures is me and him holding, the Larry Itliong book, and I posted on Instagram, and he's dressed in his barong Tagalog. He wore it for the first time, and he wore it, and he wanted to wear it for his senior pictures. So that's when I know, like, okay, I did my job. 'Cause he willingly wanted to wear it. I didn't push it. I'm like, what do you want to wear? Are you interested in if I get you this, would you wear it? And he goes, yeah, of course. So, things like that, exposing our children slowly to, things of our culture, our language, our food, obviously. I'm sure they get food, but books, and not just Filipino, but also diverse, run the gamut, diverse authors, getting involved in organizations and having them go with us to events, things like that. And I think kids absorb that and they learn like, oh yeah, we should be welcoming to everybody and it's okay to be different. And look, it's celebrated. Look at this event, all this international events. This is cool. And I think kids absorb that and when they learn that, they then go out into the world and spread the same message. So it kind of continues on.
Celebrate the diversity, enjoy the beauty, the colors of the rainbow, of everything,
Exactly.
in probably a smaller fashion way to say it, but yeah, just will go a long way. Um, in regards to that, so let's talk about your personal. So you have that knowledge and mindset, but was that always like that? I'm curious. So like when you moved to the UK and or the Philippines, well, you were in the Philippines, so like I'm sure you weren't, or I don't know, maybe you can tell me differently, that you just Filipino was what it was. You're Filipino. I'm in the Philippines. I know about my culture. I'm proud of my culture. But then it's when you distance yourself from the Philippines where you start to feel that, that difference, that other. Was it
Mm-hmm.
either in the UK or when you moved to the Philippines that you started to see and feel maybe racism, and then how did you confront that and then develop the strength that you have now where you have that pride? But you did, and we spoke earlier, there's that embarrassment when sometimes we're talking. Can you tell me a little bit of those encounters and how that affected and changed your life to a degree?
I don't think I was really cognizant of any of that when you're young. Like I said, you're busy trying to fit in. Um, I don't think I was probably older. Yeah, I was much older when I started recognizing little microaggressions and little things like that of people, for example, and it still continues to this day when I tell people like, oh yeah, I'm from the Philippines, and I already know what is going on in their head, what they're thinking. Oh, was your dad in the military? Is that how you got here? Oh, you speak the one thing I really hate, you speak good English. Um,
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there were times when I was younger, I would just nod and go, okay, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I got to the point where I'm like, no, I'm not taking this. I said, yeah, I do speak English well because I'm a journalist, I'm a writer. And then I start listing off the things, and I'm like, okay, now I'm having to justify myself. I'm having to explain my credentials. Now this is now going the other way. Um, so I have that, or I say like, oh yeah, I was in the military for I told this to one individual, and they kind of leaned down a little bit, like they were talking to a little child. And they said, oh, really? What did you do? And it kind of like that. And it was almost like I was thinking to myself, are you mocking me? You
Mm,
don't believe me? So I have experiences as I got older and I started recognizing it. And that's why I got involved with groups that address that celebrate diversity, that also do social justice. Um, and I was more sensitive to that when I worked in the schools, and I worked with a lot of underrepresented students and families. So I was very cognizant of that. So that helped me. If anything, I used it instead of something to bring me down. I used it as a superpower, so to speak.
let's go.
Like, yeah, like I can tell what you're going through, and I know, so I can talk to a kid and go, I got you. I know what you're going through. I know what your family going through. Bring them in. Let's talk. Um, and I use it that way so that I believe that if I can help them, then they can in turn help the next. So instead of being down on it, and I know it hurts. I've been on the receiving end many times. Let's turn it around and turn it into something positive. Help the next kid so that that kid can help the next kid.
I love that and I completely agree with that. I've done the same for myself. I've turned all of those punches to the gut, those failures or those name calling into superpowers. And let's we you know uh I oh, Michelle Obama always had that when they go low, you go higher. And
Exactly.
I've always turned those things into that, and I love that you've done the same.
And
Um,
turn it around. Yeah, educate people. That's what I tell
yes,
kids when they get upset. I said, you know what? You can't go wrong if you come from a place that speaks from your heart and that your intention is to educate them. You're not belittling them, you're not criticizing them. You use the right words to educate them. They can't fault you. They can't get angry at you because all you're doing is just sharing information and just trying to tell you the truth, trying to, debunk any myths. Or when you come from that, you can't go wrong. I think that's what I believe.
oh, completely. Definitely. Awesome. I want to go back to I love to spotlight these Filipino sides thing because it's what ShoPowSho is all about. But I want to go back to with them knowing that you were a baby journalist way back then from Sesame Street. When you got into school, so like they kind of saw these things of you watching Sesame Street. Was that the goal that you had in your head? And basically how academics affected that. So like when you got into school, did you take classes in high school and then we're gonna get to college in a bit. But like
Yeah.
what were the goals? Like I wanted to be Indiana Jones, I wanted to be an archaeologist at one time. I wanted to raid tombs and bring home treasure, but then I also wanted to be a football star. What were the various dreams, or was journalist the number one thing? And then how did you go about utilizing school to achieve those dreams?
One of my heroes growing up, this was back in the 80s. I'm dating myself. God, I feel old. Was Connie Chung. Honestly,
Yes.
she was
Yes.
the only one I could look up to who was on national TV. Isn't it sad? I had one person, um, and I wanted to be like her. I'm like, that's my goal. I'm gonna be like her. So I really, took a lot of reading and write. I didn't, just took the standard classes, but I also wrote for the school paper. I did editorial cartooning for a while for the paper. So yeah, I was in a high school paper, because that was my goal. And then what else was I watching? Oh, I later was watching Murphy Brown, and I wanted to be her. I even
Yeah.
bought this long trench coat that she wore because I thought I was gonna be Murphy. I had this long coat, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be a reporter. I did, but not to that extent. But yeah, and then in college, obviously, I majored in journalism and took courses that were required, and just absorbed and just kept absorbing and absorbing, um, and trying to look up, trying to find people I can look up to emulate. Barbara Walters was really the biggest female one, and like I say, Connie Chung was the only Asian person that I knew who was female, who was up there high enough that I had high visibility, that I can look up to. Um, yeah, those were the people that I was trying to emulate at the time, and there weren't a lot. Now it's great that there's more people of color and more Asian people in journalism, but at the time it was kind of sparse, and you kind of had to find your own way.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I'm so upset.
I'm part of the AAJA, the Asian American Journalists Association, and I missed a Connie Chung event like a week or two ago because of things. But she is an icon to me as well. So
Oh,
I'm with you on that because we had very few. We had very few, and she is one of our greats. So with that being said, right? So you wanted to become a journalist, but how did your family feel about it? Because I have a lot of creatives, like myself, and when we talk about this story that I'm doing with you as well, when it came to getting ready to go to college, it was okay for us to have the arts in high school as an elective, but as a goal, as a dream, and you say you're going to go to school for that, they were like, no, you need to find another major. You need to do this and the third. Was that the same for you with journalism? What was your parents' feelings when you went off to college and journalism was what you wanted to do?
when I was really, really little, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but I quickly realized that was not my thing. I was not very good with the sciences. Um, I think that they were very supportive because they were big on watching the news and things like that. They were very big on news. And so to me to say, I want to be a journalist, I want to be like Connie Chung, I want to be up there in the news. I said, and if I can't be that, maybe I wanted to work for National Geographic so I could travel around the world, and see the world and tell stories of people. I just want to tell stories. And they were quite supportive of that. They did the best they could with that. It was very hard. That's another part of the immigrant story, is that your parents are trying so hard to build a life for the family. They're working so hard that they don't have time really to try and help you navigate through the American school system or whatever school system you're in. They're just trying to put food on the table, and there's a lot of stories of that. I have former students who have the same stories. We've all gone through it. So you as a child is trying to understand all this, navigate through this. I want to go to college. How do I get to college? What are scholarships? What do I even qualify for one? Is there such a thing as financial? How do you aid? Oh no, you don't qualify for it. I don't. So there's that difficulties. I'm going to tell you a story of how I managed to explain this to my parents. I was a director of a college readiness program at the local high school here. Um, and we had training in San Diego. So that's where my parents are. And they came and met me. And they're like, oh, let's go out to lunch. And I couldn't get them to understand what my job was, what am I doing here and what it is. I said, so we saw this water tower, and I believe it's the UCSD water tower. Uh, And I had applied there when I was in high school to go to UCSD, but we didn't have the money. I was accepted, but I didn't have the money. That was my dream school at the time. So I told her, I said, "Oh, look at that." And she goes, "Yeah, didn't you apply to that? Remember you applied to when you graduated?" I said, "Yeah, but remember, Mom, we didn't have the money for me to go there. That was my dream school." She goes, "Yeah, and we kind of went quiet. I said, "Mom, this is why I'm here. I'm here for this training with other educators so that I can help other kids so that they don't have to go, oh, I wanted to go to that school, but I couldn't. So that's why I'm learning how to support these students so I can make sure that they can have that dream. They can go to their dream school." And she finally understood why I was getting into education and why I wanted to help out. There was that kind of quiet moment where it kind of
Wow.
sunk in.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And
Just such a it's our life. It's as immigrants and navigating the system and making these decisions, and like all they see is like I had scholarships. We're gonna get into. We talked a little bit earlier, about military. I had scholarships for my writing and my music. I
Oh, nice.
was I wanted to be a creative since I was little. I've always wanted to get into filmmaking, arts, all of that. And again, and like I was telling you earlier, when I've had other creatives online in these interviews, we just talk about, our family is somewhat supportive, during those years. But then when it just comes to college, they want you to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer because they just know that that's the big money jobs. But
Mhm.
then they also don't even tell you how to go about doing that. They expect you to, like you were just saying, to figure out ways to fund it. And you're like, I thought you guys, and I love it. I'm so, man, thank you for sharing that part of the story because that's so impactful. Like, and to have that full turnaround that you've had and her to finally recognize that, I can only imagine. I would have been crying. I'm sure probably you already had your tears on that. That's just insane. Um, sorry, I got sidetracked because that was just wow, wow. So you go to you choose your path in college. You graduate. um did that change, or how was that with the family? I'm curious.
Um, I think they were obviously my mom was very proud. My parents were very proud. I'm the only child, so
So,
everything
so
I
the
just
first
imagine.
immigrant to graduate.
Yeah, yeah. My mom graduated from college in the Philippines. My dad did not, and so I'm there. Like, there's a lot of pressure when you're only kid. You come from an immigrant family. All the hopes and dreams
Right.
are you're carrying it all.
It's a weight.
Um,
It's a
because
weight.
there's only one chance. You can only get one chance. They don't have any other kid. Um, everything, all their hopes and dreams are on you as well as your own hopes and dreams. So yeah, it was a proud moment. I think they were very happy. But the sad thing was for me to get a journalism job, I had to move out of California. It's very difficult when you're just starting out in the journalism world. California's for the big timers. I went to the Midwest to try and get a journalism job, and that's where I started, and here I am still in the Midwest.
So that's
Uh,
how you ended up in Minnesota.
yeah, in a kind of a roundabout way. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. At the
Okay.
time, I had moved to the Midwest. I moved to Nebraska, was where I got my first journalism job, and it was kind of sad. Obviously, my parents, I'm their only kid, and I'm moving away. But the reality is, when it comes to
Uh,
journalism, you can know where the
yeah.
job is.
Yeah, Filipino households, they want you to be nearby, and you want to be nearby. You want to be able to support them because that's just what we know. But yeah, but you also
Yeah,
have to follow your dreams. So that can also be freeing. While I'm sure it was hard, but I'm also sure there's a phoenix in you wanting to find and live again, rebirth and for yourself, your
yeah.
own mindset. So tell me, graduating and getting into, as we find our way into also being a author, as we see behind me, but the number one goal was being a Sesame Street journalist. Tell me, can you tell me just some of that story for those that are interested in maybe some like pointers that you learned along the way post college and actually trying to make this a reality and moving to the Midwest, obviously, because those were the opportunities were.
it was kind of a culture shock coming from California, where there were a lot of people who looked like me. And at the time I'd gone to the Midwest, there weren't a lot of people who looked like me. So I was a little hesitant about it. Like, do I really fit in? Am I going to get a job? Um, but I managed to get a job at a radio station, and the station manager who interviewed me said one of the reasons that I got the job was it was funny because I learned Russian. I took up Russian when I was in college. She goes, that to me alone shows your determination to learn a language that hardly anybody does, and that you got an A in it, and that you stuck it out, even though, because I told him his story, I'm like, people were dropping like flies in that class. I'm like, but I stuck it through.
Yeah.
Because I was determined that I was going to be a reporter, and who knows, I might need to learn Russia. What if they send me to Russia? What if I needed to, at the time, Gorbachev was this big deal, you know? I'm like, if I needed to interview him, you know, I had all these big dreams in my head. I was crazy. I needed to learn Russian. And he goes, the fact that you stuck it out and you had these goals and you clearly was trying to make a path, you know, that stuck to me, and you stuck out to me as an applicant. And so I got the job. So tip, learn languages. But if you don't learn languages, you know, be honest and tell your story. Make sure I always tell the kids when they apply for scholarships or go to college, tell them about your hardship story. You have a story. Tell them what happened to you and how you overcame it, because employers, people who want to give out money, scholarship, want to know how you overcame adversity. Why do they want to invest their time in you? Why do they want to give their money in you? Because you're a guarantee. You've already overcome adversity. So anything they throw at you is just icing on the cake, you know? So tell your story. Don't be embarrassed by it. Be proud of it. Tell your hardship story and tell them how you got over it. And I think that's one of the things that people need to remember, not just for applying jobs, not for just anything, but even when you're teaching kids, you're talking to your own child, tell them who you are, tell them your story, tell them your hardship story, not in an angry kind of way of, oh, back in the day, we didn't have this, but in a heartfelt way, you know, slowly telling their story. And I think kids will absorb that and learn from that and pass that on.
Definitely agree. When they see that it's authentic, I think when people know things are authentic and not fake and put on, it gets absorbed more and heard more. And I love that. So journalists on the radio, what was that like? Did you have like were you just regular news reports coming in?
Yep.
How did you, as someone who's somewhat introverted, you know, you said as well,
well, at least I
on
didn't
the
have
mic
to
and
look
was
good,
able
right?
to just talk on the mic and communicate?
I say on the radio, I didn't have to look good, right? I didn't have to dress up for it. Well, no, I did have to go out and do stories. When I was in college, I did do like the college radio thing where I would read the news, and I even had like this little DJ gig kind of in the college radio, probably 2 people listening to me or something at the time. So I got a little practice on the mic. But being on the radio, that was really awesome. I was in my early 20s, and I was told I sounded kind of young. My voice was really, because I was young. I was the youngest one in the radio station. And so I was paired up with this guy. He was awesome. He was a veteran of the radio, smoked, I don't know how many packs a day. So he had this really deep voice that sounded really like how a reporter on the radio should sound. You know, I had that deep voice. And they paired me up with him on Saturdays. I would go in for like a voice class where he taught me how to pronounce things and how to do things to try and deepen my voice a little more, so I didn't sound too young when I delivered the news. Yeah, I don't know if that would fly these days, because that would be allowed. But back in the day, that's what I was like. You need to sound a little older. I'm like, okay, well, how do I speak? I'm speaking for my diaphragm, and I'm like, but geez, do I have to smoke 10 packs a day like he does? I'm like, but yeah, that was one of the things I had to do, was to try and sound older. There was this woman that also worked at the station, who had this really nice sultry voice when she talked. I'm like, and so I would try and imitate her, but to no avail, obviously, because that was her style, that was not mine. That's when I realized you should discover your own voice,
Exactly.
and figure out how you sound like. So I would like tape record myself. Back in the day, tape recorders.
Yeah.
Play it back, and I'm like, oh God, that sounded awful. I immediately like rewind, and try and practice. I got better at it, and I would even help voice commercials. Some of our in-house commercials that we did. So I got proud of that, and that's when I learned how to come up with different voices because you don't want people to recognize your voice because you're a news person, and now you got to voice the shoe commercial, so you got to sound different. And so that's kind of how my journey in radio was like, is learning how to sound older and learning how to use your voice. If nobody can see you, how can you deliver the news in a way that people will believe and listen to you?
Totally. And it's such good. I love that.
As a creative filmmaker, and I've done voiceover work, you've done voiceover work, figure out different ways for that performance, and just adds tools to your tool set, especially if you're trying to do different things in the genre. I have as a news reporter, and I have other friends that that cover news. Uh, the difficulties when you have something like a mass murder, the hard hitting stories that are like, how did that ever impact you in covering coverage like that?
There's some stories that stay with you,
yeah,
that you don't realize was in you until later on. Maybe it might have been years later, that stays with you. One of the stories that stayed with me was a young lady. I believe she was a teenager at the time, and I covered her trial. It was a murder trial. And when I believe they were questioning her and they were talking, up top, she looked really strong and she was in control because she probably didn't want to show any emotion. Maybe her lawyer told her, don't show any emotion. But when I looked down, I noticed that she was shaking her leg. Her leg was shaking, like nervously. And that to me, that stuck to me. It was like now that I think, it was like a writer moment, that's something that you would describe in a book of this person was in control, but really wasn't. And in my mind, I'm like, this is a child. And that's when it dawned on me, like, who I'm covering. I'm covering the story of a child who made the wrong decision. And that stuck to me. Well, that's one of the stories that really stuck to me as a reporter. And you're like, how am I supposed to tell the story? What am I supposed to say? I'm only supposed to say certain information, keep it news. And I never described that shaking leg. I never reported on that, but that stuck with me. And that kind of affected me on how I delivered that news. Because that's when I realized this is a person, this is a human being, this is a child. She's still a child. And what I say and what I deliver on the news that night matters. So I'm having to be really careful what words I choose. So that's when I think it hit me that being a news reporter, being a journalist is a very, very powerful role. You are in control of the information. Information is power, and you are in control of that, and how you deliver it affects the people who are going to hear it and or watch it. So you have to be very, very careful. It's a huge responsibility. Journalists have a huge responsibility on how they deliver what is going on in the world, because it will affect how people take it, and you could have that domino effect on what's going to happen next.
Agreed.
I wanted to, that was so powerful, and I don't know if, and I hope people that are watching this will understand just how powerful that is. And I wanted to use that as a segue because for myself, similar situation with what you've experienced. I was a yeoman in the Navy. We were talking military service earlier, and yeoman is essentially, the officers, personnel men, ships admin, especially when you're on a small ship like I was. You're doing a lot of that documentation, that recording of events that were occurring on your ship. And I experienced a lot. I was in the Persian Gulf for most of my time in the military. and would have to record things. And so there's that responsibility that I learned as a writer myself. And like, when you're reporting, you're covering, you're documenting things that are occurring, and that responsibility of making sure you're entailing everything that occurred with what you're doing. And then that informs work later on, especially creative work. A lot of what I try to do, and I think you do much of the same, is not only entertain, but educate with that entertainment and inspire through that entertainment. So I want to throw it back to you with that being said, and those life experiences, how that translated into your journalism career, and then moving forward into how the military aspect of your career came into your life. And then, you were speaking, you work for you do some government work as well. And then leading into this amazing work behind me.
I didn't join the military until later on. I was in my late 20s by the time I joined the military. I was a reporter covering an event at a military base, and I ran into somebody who was a public affairs officer. And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he had told me about what he does as a public affairs officer. Some of them write stories, but they also deal with media and things like that. I'm like, "Oh, that's a job in the military? That's so cool." And it dawned on me that hey, maybe I could do that, because I'm a journalist. I have some of that background, and I'm familiar with being part of the media. I can handle them. I know I have friends in the media. And it also one of those things where I wanted to find something bigger than myself, to serve somehow, something bigger than myself. And I wanted to give back to the United States, the country that took us in, that, I wouldn't have had all these opportunities had I not been able to come here. So that's the reason why I joined the military, to give back. I became a public affairs officer, so I went through ROTC. I had a degree. I said I was already a journalist. Went back to join, get my communications, my master's, and then join ROTC. And I became a public affairs officer, and I was dealing with, I wrote stories. I was one of the few, one of people who loved to write stories. So they sent us to Defense Information School in Fort Meade. That's where all branches to be in public affairs, you were sent there. And when it came time for the journalism course, I'm like, "Oh, I got this." I was like this. I'm like, "Yeah, I got this." And then I learned that you had to speak military. I'm like, "Oh, I don't got this." Wait, you're right. You write certain things differently. Okay, you do things a little differently, but we do all AP style, so it's very similar to journalism. So I felt like I had a leg up on that. And then dealing with the media, obviously, I'm like, "Oh, I can tell you how media reporters think." So when I became a public affairs officer and I had to do interviews, like, our colonels or generals, whatever, had to be interviewed by the media, I would prepare them. I would prep them. "Sir, this is what I think. Having been a journalist myself, I can bet you these are the questions they will ask." And I will prep them. And I'm proud to say that every time they're interviewed, those questions that I prepped them with were the ones that were asked. So I'm like, yeah, so that's how, I built some street cred with them. And I've had reporters who would say, like, "You're always so nice. You're always so kind. You always know what we need, and you always have your people prepared." I'm like, "Yeah, I know," because I never told them that I was a journalist, because I didn't want them to know, because I just want them to know that I was doing my job, that I was highly trained. But it was a leg up, so that really helped me. There's one time where we also practiced doing exercises. So I was sent in during an exercise to pretend that I was the media and see if this one colonel can handle it. I did my role so well that he actually thought I was the media. He did not know, because I came in with civilian clothes and just was trying to interview him. So, "Hey, so what's going on here right now in this exercise? Can you tell me more?" And it wasn't until the end, until somebody said, "She's one of us, right? This is all an exercise." And he's like, "No." No. And I'm like, "Oh, great, I played my role really well. I still got it." So yeah, I was used for a lot of that. So they're like, "Go prepare somebody and go." And so I thought that was one of the funniest moments that I got to prepare. And he goes, "No, I thought you really were a reporter, and I was getting interviewed, so I'm trying to give you all these cool answers." So I'm like, "Yeah, you did good."
Definitely.
did good. Um, that was fun for art. So having serving and being able to use some of that writing talent that I had cultivated since I was a kid all the way up to journalism, and everything was paying off in serving my country. I would have never thought that was a possibility.
That's amazing.
And all of these situations, these experiences added to your tool set for
Right.
down the road, right? And
Somehow, yeah.
because I've had very many of those same kind of situations, and still actually do with some of the work I do now. But they just help, I think, make us better writers and creatives and journalists of what we're trying to do with our work. And also because of those difficult stories that we cover in situations, um, help you approach things uh, in a much more passionate way and
Yeah.
sincere way as well. And so, and also could be like what I have behind me of your work can help. Uh, what's the word? I'm missing my words right now. I had such an eloquent thing I was going to say, but um, it could just help from those traumatic situations, to just write something refreshing and feel good, right? So how did you go from that kind of work to this amazing work that I have behind me?
Um, I I don't just let it said throughout on and off. I've been writing stories, pretend stories, friction stories. Even when I remember sixth grade, I wrote a story with a friend of mine, and this is how I realized how much I love writing, because she and I would argue about we had some creative differences at sixth grade. I'm like, no, the story can't go that way. We can't do this. Oh, we will never get this book published because you can't agree with me. That's when I realized, like, dang, I'm passionate about this, and when we're arguing about this.
Yeah,
Um,
when it means
but
so
on and
much.
off, yeah, on and off, I would write stories, but I would never publish it. They would die in my notebook, or, gathering dust somewhere. It wasn't until the early 2000s that I decided that I wanted to try and take it a little bit more seriously and see what I could do. And in 2017, I applied and then got accepted to a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing for Children and Young Adults. That I'm like, wow, that's a degree. I didn't realize that I was doing research one day. I was in the education field, so I was researching possibly getting my admin license or something. I was researching the local university, and I accidentally found the MFA program for creative writing in children and young adults. And I got goosebumps. There was nobody else in the school building. I was in my office. It was like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and everybody was gone except for our custodian. I said, yes. And the custodian came running, like, what's going on? What's going on? I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just found the thing. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I think this is what I'm going to do. And I texted my husband, you're not going to believe what I found. And he's like, uh-oh. I'm like, I think I found where I'm going to go. I found it. I think this is it. And I ended up going there. I ended up using my GI Bill. Thank you, GI Bill.
Yeah.
Paid for about 80% of my tuition. I would never have been able to go back to college if it wasn't for the GI Bill. And I managed to afford it. So a couple of years later, graduated. A semester before I graduated, I got my first work for hire gig. It's one of those things again where I just threw my name in the hat. Somebody was looking online for writers of color. I'm like, what have I got to lose? I'm still in the program for college. Who knows? They're probably never going to hire me, but what the heck? So I put my name in this Google Doc. And a few months later, before I even graduate from this program, I got an email that says, you interested in writing this book or this biography? So I'm like, oh, I'm not a biography. I'm not a nonfiction person. Those are my journalism days. I want to write makeup stories, like fiction and fantasy and aliens and magic and things. And they're like, yeah, this is what we got. Okay, fine. This is a start. And I loved it. My first two books were nonfiction. I kind of bit my tongue on that and like, well, maybe I do like nonfiction after all. My first book was the one behind you there was about Stephen Hawking. And from there on, it took off.
Was it the research?
What do you think clicked for you that made you like it? Was it like, I like research. When you
Yeah.
put together all the notes from all that research and then find the story from the
Yep.
notes, it's
I think, of course, having been a journalist, that's awesome because I had this skill. I realized I still had it.
yeah,
I still know where to go. And gosh, when I got started, there were no internet and all this stuff. That's right. And I did research from my phone nowadays.
yeah.
Um, and I'm like, wow, all this fountain of information. And I really still, I'm a lifelong learner. I just love learning. There were so many things I didn't know about Stephen Hawking, about him being a kid. All I know is the Big Bang Theory. That's it. But once I delve into it and started learning all these facts and learning all about what he did and these things, nuances that people might never know. I'm like, oh, people might like this. Oh, people might like this. That kind of got me excited. And I realized that it's just like being a journalist again. I'm just doing a research and I'm telling a story. It's about storytelling. I just connected it all. I mean, being a journalist, I'm telling somebody a story that an event that happened. Or when I'm writing a book, I'm storytelling. I've always been a storyteller, and that's when it finally clicked in. How 40 something years later, finally click in. I'm a storyteller.
But it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing. All the light bulbs going off, and it's like it just becomes so freeing and easier. So with that said, so you were doing that to then put the nerd hat on. I was also reading you love going to conventions and all that. I love that with your family. Can you tell me, like, so you said you started with autobios, Hawking, Stan Lee behind me.
Yep.
How did we get towards some of these other works? Terra about the tsunamis, just all of that. Teen Titans Go. Can we talk about some of the nerdiness and some of these other projects that have come through?
I think as I took on more work for hire, and I think they realized, okay, I'm thinking they said, okay, you can handle this. And so I would ask for more. What else do you have? Is there anything? Hey, keep me in mind for this. Hey, don't forget me of this. As I guess I was getting bolder and bolder as I like, hey, I do
got
this
to.
too. Yeah, and I think that's another thing that young people or any creative who, whatever stage you are in your career, to not be afraid to speak up. The worst thing I could say is no.
Exactly. I love that. Yep.
Just ask. You never know. Like for Red Riding Hood, that was a graphic novel. So I just happened to email and say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. I like graphic novels. Got any graphic novels? Yeah, sure. We'll keep you in mind. And one day they emailed, hey, we have this line of graphic novels. You interested? And that's kind of how Teen Titans happened. It had been a while since I've heard from the publisher that I work for hire. I said, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Listen, I'm interested in still writing. Can't do nonfiction right now. I'm working full time. I don't have time to do as much research like I used to, but I'm still interested in fiction. Well, by the way, I just throw everything in the kitchen sink trying to sell myself. And like, oh, I love Comic Cons. I love cartoons and I love superheroes. So if you happen to have anything like that, I see that you carry such and such, you do Batman and all that stuff. I know a lot about comic books. And I got an email back. Well, it's nothing available right now, but we'll tell the other person who handles that in case. I'm like, okay, there goes that. And then months later, I get an email. Hey, we're doing Teen Titans Go. You interested? Yes. Before I could even finish reading the sentence, I was already typing back, and I'm like, oh wait, what did they ask? And I'm like going, I had already said yes and not even finished reading the email because I couldn't pass it up. I just couldn't. We used to watch Teen Titans. I'm a big fan of the original Teen Titans, and then Teen Titans Go. I was like, but then it caught on to me as well, and so how could you pass that up? It's DC. You never know.
I love that. Advocate for yourself.
At every time, believe in yourself and advocate for yourself.
The worst thing I could say is no, we ain't got nothing for you right now. Now, they didn't say no completely. They said not right now. And then they
Definitely.
remembered you, right? So they might come back and go, oh, now we do. You still interested? Yes.
I love
Just
that energy.
I always teach students to never pass up an opportunity. Um, Never let it go by because you might not get it again. If you say no. So before you say no, think about it first. Don't let it pass you by. Even if how small it might be, you might think it's insignificant right now, or it might be just a, piddly little thing. It might be big later on. Never
Agreed.
know.
Completely agree. I want to take us back full circle to the beginning of our interview now. So we've talked about, some of these license work you've done, but we talked about what Lola wants earlier to then now kind of writing your own stories. Cause we talked about the journalism thing, we talked about all that, but now what I think is so absolutely beautiful. And I'm so thankful you're sharing this and you're sharing your grandfather with us as a people now. And when things come apart, it just means so much. What was that like to decide to do that in the midst of all of this?
It was therapeutic. uh, it's not a very big grandiose word, but to me it was healing. That's what I was looking for. It was very healing. The time that my grandfather, I was very close to him. Like I said, he had all these great big dreams for me that he and I shared. Um, when he started getting sick and started forgetting things and started not recognizing things, and sometimes then he stopped watching Sesame Street with me and he stopped doing things with me because he was sick. It was a traumatic time for me as a child of nobody really explained to me what was wrong. All I understood was he was sick and I always believed he was going to get better. I didn't know. It's a traumatic time for a kid when they're going through that and they have no answers. So as I wrote this, I actually wrote this for my creative thesis while I was going for my master's in creative writing. All the other stories that I'd written for class and all the stories I tried to get published was like pulling teeth. This one just kind of flowed. One day I just like, I have to present something, I have to write something creative. And all my advisors, especially my first one, I heard her in my head. She's just like, tell your story, just tell your story. But every time I would tell myself, nobody's going to want to hear it. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. No, who's going to read that? Right? Everybody wants to read about magical school and all these other things, the cool things. But she kept at it at me. She was also the one who told me to start with nonfiction. But she says, find your voice and just share your story. Keep writing. And so I did. So the first story I thought of was my grandfather and that whole thing that happened to him and how I wished that I could have done something to help him. So now I'm hoping that this story will help open conversations with families about anyone who's sick in your family, whether it's grandparents, anybody, and open that dialogue, open that conversation to help kids understand what is going on, be honest with them, obviously make it kind of age appropriate, but be honest and tell them and comfort them. Let them know what's going on because I really believe that kids are smarter than we think, that we give them credit for. And they need to know so that they don't have to be, it's traumatizing no matter what, but it helps to have somebody explain to you what is going on and walk you through it. You as an adult would want that, somebody to tell you what is going on. So hoping that this will also share that and share the importance of staying connected and communicating with our family, no matter what generation.
So beautiful. And we are so thankful for you sharing that and just so oh my gosh, so beautiful, so sweet. The artwork just so tender, so charming. Can you shout out your team that helped you put this together?
Oh, yes. Filipino artist Jamie Bauza, I love you. She was amazing. She and I never met. This is normal for the publishing world.
Yeah.
Artist and author do not meet. I provide notes to editor. Editor provides notes to artist. But her being in the Philippines, and when I told her, my vision, wrote it down, her notes, provided editor and gives to her. And when I saw the sample art for the pages, I, 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 I
Bawling.
was like, what? I was. And my editor said, what do you think? In an email. And I emailed her back and I said, the first word that came to me was home. It was the only word that kept repeating over and over in my head was home. And I said, you picked the right illustrator and she's the one. She's gonna take this home. And she has. I didn't have to explain to her what an ice cream cart looked like in the Philippines. She captured everything. I'm like, oh my God, that even looks like my house when I was growing up. The little details on the window. I'm like, oh my gosh, the tree looks just like the guava tree. I didn't have to go into great details because I wanted her to have creative freedom. It just clicked. It was like I said, it's like magic. It's like, I like to think Grandpa was up there making this happen.
Yes.
And Kids Can Press. I had to go to Canada. My publisher is a Canadian publisher. So your artist is Filipino. The publisher, the editor is Canadian. I'm a Filipino American. It was like a UN thing going here, that all these people from different countries and parts of the world came together. It's magical. If you think about it, came together.
Love it.
To create this book. Never, when I was growing up in the Philippines, when my grandfather told me you're going to make it to America and pursue your dream, could I ever, ever, ever even imagine, even the frog thing, never would I have imagined, this is even bigger than that this would happen and that my first book would be dedicated to the man who had a dream for me.
Congratulations. Oh, you're going to make me cry. So beautiful. I love that.
I'm going to cry thinking about it.
So beautiful. And I'm so, thank you for sharing.
This is what it's about, man. This is what it's about.
Exactly.
And this is what all the stories to people who come to this country have. I'm only one in that little droplet, huge ocean of all these people who have amazing stories to tell. Who I wish would also get this opportunity to share their stories.
Agreed. So thankful for you, Cristina, and thank you for sharing your story. As much as you were saying, I don't know if people want to hear it. People want to hear it. I am so thankful to have heard it, and I can't wait for everybody that's going to see this later to hear it. And just this whole full circle moment of everything in your journey, and that Filipino element of where we can or you don't, or that, and the struggle, but the sacrifices in making it happen. I have two more questions before we close out because I told you an hour and we've gone over a little bit more than that. My apologies to your family. No. But I'm so thankful and everyone's going to appreciate this as well. I love What Lola Wants, but and you gave us your own personal story, and those authentic stories are the best stories. Do we have more in the can? And can we see you and Jamie work together now that y'all found each other because it's so beautiful? Like, what was that like? So post that book, I know you're still kind of celebrating it and pushing it, but has even the publishing company be like, wow, this is amazing, like we would love more of this? Is there more on the way possibly?
Oh yeah, I'm always writing. I always got like 10 stories swimming in my head. I have been in touch with Jamie. We are on social media. We follow each other and we talk with each other like, okay, how are we going to promote this book? Or sometimes she goes, hey, I saw a book in Canada, and she'll send me a picture and I'd post it. So we've never met, but we have this relationship, and it's just so awesome that we connected through this. Two Filipinos who've never met each other, connecting through art, through our creative, the power of creativity, right? She and her drawing, she and my words, we created something beautiful, and we have a friendship. Maybe, hopefully, I'm hoping that one day we'll meet in person and really connect. But I do have other stories I'm working on, hoping to sell a chapter book. I have a couple of other picture books in mind. Still continuing to put diverse stories out there, uplifting diverse voices, and especially our own Filipino voices. So hopefully, it's a hard market, man. It's a hard market to share stories. There's so many great artists and so many great authors out there. I'm hoping somebody will once again listen to me and my story and put it out there. So
definitely.
Fingers crossed.
And for those that are watching, listening to this, because I know, as I think I told you earlier, I'm based in DC area. So a lot of people listen to this as they're on their commute, which is DC, from Fort Meade, can be a commute. So Pay attention. All the links will be in the description. Please hit up Cristina. Let's support this amazing creative.
Uh, thank you
I
so
actually
much.
had I've thought of another question real quickly to close
Yeah.
this out. Beyond my final nerd question that I always do, uh, is IP wise, because I know you're a nerd. I'm curious. Well, like what are other IPs you want to touch? You touched on Teen Titans. Is there like a DC project, a Marvel project, Star
Mm.
Wars, Star Trek? I don't know which level on the stars you're on.
Oh my God.
You
Star
know,
Trek,
is there a
Star
particular
Wars.
IP you'd like to touch that is out there?
I do dream of Marvel as well. Any kind of any superhero, any Marvel superheroes. I originally had told my friends back at the university that I would like to. I only picked one. I said either DC, Marvel, Disney, or Pixar, and they said, "Why are you putting or? Just say and." You want to work for? You want to write for DC, Marvel, Disney, and Pixar? And I said, "Yeah," and I repeated it. And a few months later, that's when I got the DC, by the way, the Teen Titans Go. So sending it to the universe, I'm checking off the boxes that I'm hoping anything Marvel I would gladly take. I'm dressing up as Miss Marvel for Halloween.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. Awesome.
I'm also a
Awesome.
big Marvel fan.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna put that energy into the universe.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. So my last question, beyond spreading that into the universe, is if you're to give a nerd TED style talk, uh, on anything, what would it be? And it can't be about books because we already know that. We already know you're a journalist. We know you've done stuff. It has to be something completely out of this world that no one really knows that you secretly could give a TED talk on something. I've had a lot of plant people. I had somebody that were about pitted fruits. I think on the last one, they know everything about certain pitted fruits. Just something just like is so benign that like you just know everything about it, and you just is something weird that you just have found that you just have knowledge on.
This is going to sound weird, but since it's Halloween, I'm
I
going to
love
go
this.
there. Murder, mystery stuff,
Okay.
true crime.
True. Okay.
Yeah, there's this show on TV called Murder House Flip, where they actually renovate houses where murders have occurred.
Oh
Um,
my gosh, I need to find that. I like flipping houses. So a
yeah,
murder house? What?
Murder House. Yeah, and they actually redecorate it because people actually buy these homes and then they realize, I think I want it renovated and redone because it's too much. Um, and so my husband and I were watching it. And then the first episode, I'm like, oh, I know this story. Okay, so this woman, she kills people and she plants her body. And he's like, how do you know all this? And he's like, oh, you just got lucky. Next second episode, I'm like, oh, I know this one. Okay, so this guy, he's like, you're starting to scare me. So yeah, I know a lot about like murder, mystery, true crime kind of thing. I can probably talk to you about all the shows I watch from CSI to real like real life, like 48, first 48 or City Confidential, Joe Kenda, all these people who solve crimes. Yeah, I wanted to be OSI in the Air Force back in the day, so
Oh, okay. That
I
makes
ended
sense.
up being a journalist instead. So
I
say
deal
from
with a
I
lot
just
of OSI folk. That's why my writing's so good, because I deal with so many OSI folk.
now I just report on. I ended up reporting on the crime and not really investigating it, but still kind of like
Oh
that.
my
So yeah,
goodness.
I could probably do a TED talk on true crime.
Excellent. Well, Christina, thank you for sharing that. Again, it is such a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm so thankful for that, and I can't wait for the rest of the people to hear your story. For those that are driving, as we close out, I will have your links in the description below. But for those that have that great ability to remember everything that they've heard, how can you tell people your handles or websites or just anything else to close this out?
I'm at Christina, without an H, ChristinaOxtra.com. You can find me on X, Threads, Instagram, and also Facebook. Facebook, just type in my name, and I'm Googleable now, so I feel like I'm going up in the world. You can just find me there. If you want to reach me, there's a way you can message me through all of this, and also through my website if you want me to do a school visit, do a talk, whatever game.
Awesome. There you go, y'all. Again, all the links will be in the description below, especially if you don't have that good of a memory like me anymore, because I'm getting a lot older now. That melanin, that fish and rice keeps us looking young, doesn't it, though? You know,
Exactly, right?
I'm in my 40s, late 40s now, and it's like, Patrick, you look
I'm
like you're
older than you.
Yeah. So, hey, but you look
We're
so
well
young.
preserved.
Exactly. So thank you again, everybody. Cristina Oxtra, I'm Kuya P. This is Nerds Rule the World. Mahal
Woohoo!
kita. Salamat. I almost forgot that. That's how we sign off. We love y'all. Bye.
Mahal
Recording. All right, I'm gonna count us in and we'll get into it. Okay, here we go. In a 1, 2, 3.